Hey guys, even out the runners, fellas. LS heads are a mess with the runners. They're all out of shape. I smooth them out, try to make them straighter. Does it help much? I think it does. Helps me look at them better without them being all wavy like that. Yeah, guys, I'm back on the LS stuff. Had to put the 460 stuff aside for a bit. The guy wants these. I've had them for a long time. He said he didn't need them right away, wasn't in a hurry. Now the car's getting pretty close to where he wants it, and he wants them. This guy here is my favorite customer, and I'm going to tell you why. He never gives me a hard time. And a customer has a right to say what he wants to say when it comes to his stuff. These are his. So if he came to me and said he don't want them done a certain way, I have to listen to that. This guy here, he's just the opposite. He says, do what you think will work. I said, what if the guides crack out if I get them too thin? Well, we'll fix it. Or it's a race motor. That's how you go fast. He don't want situations, but I just got off the phone with him, and that's what he said. I said, I don't have any way of knowing if I have these thin in a couple spots, except for if you want to take them and get them sonic tested. He says, well, just do what you think. That makes it a lot easier for me. Because a while back, I did a pair of these heads for another guy. And when he handed me the heads, the first thing he said to me, don't go throwing them heads. And the guy's a no-nonsense guy. He doesn't play. He's a good guy, but he doesn't play around. I'll tell you what he thinks in a heartbeat. So, he's also the type of person that goes by flow numbers. I don't go by flow numbers. And the reason is because, let's say I make these flow 300, doesn't mean that they're going to work well. You could have a car that has a good head that flows big numbers, and it'll be a mutt. That's how it works out. You can have a head that will flow less, and it'll be a stout head. And I've seen that a lot of times. Half the time you see a car that doesn't run right, and they keep dumping fuel into the engine, jetting it up. It's usually in the heads. If you're overcompensating with fuel, you usually have a head that's not efficient. But anyway, this guy here is my favorite customer. And we'll get to see these run, hopefully, fellas, in a while. He's working on the car. He actually wants them to put on the other engine that he's putting together. And hopefully you guys will see that run. I'm anxious for this on YouTube. I love it when I can tell and show you guys stuff and back it and prove what I do. Not for myself, just so you guys can see, hey, he did that and it worked. But getting back to the other guy, when he handed me them heads, and I got here in this garage and I started on them, I couldn't do what I wanted to normally do. I had to actually call him up 2 or 3 times. And then he'd be like, well, yeah, do what you have to, but, but there's a but. And that's fine, because they're his heads. He don't want them where he has to have them repaired. I understand that. But here's the thing. When I was doing them heads, I was as nervous as a porcupine in a balloon factory. Because in the LS world and in the Coyote world, when they're cylinder heads, you could do the same amount of work to one runner and move to the next runner, and the casting won't be the same. I had a pair of Coyote heads that I was doing. And for myself, I've been fortunate. I've never had a situation that I remember going through where I couldn't use the heads. So, Coyote heads, you just don't walk in the junkyard and find them either. So, I was careful. I was going extreme on them, but I was careful. But the thing is this, guys. I got on the other runner, got around a bowl area, barely touched it, and went through. So I called the guy up. I said, I need you to look at this runner. I want you to come over and see this for yourself. I didn't go through because I went too thin. He came over and looked at that. He goes, wow. Thought I'd tell you guys that story because of one reason. If you're doing a pair of heads, take your time. Don't take a lot of meat out at one time. Just work your way into it when you think it might be a bad area, especially. When you know like a LS has a bad spot up around the guide, then you especially go easy there. Or the water jacket, you especially go easy there. Do your research, do your homework, so you don't have to have these problems. And like I said, they're aluminum. You can always weld them. But sometimes, some of them areas are so thin, yeah, it's hard to fix them. Because when the aluminum is that thin, it'll actually burn away where you're trying to fix it. I've seen guys have a lot of problems trying to fix something that there was nothing there. So you have to actually build it up and work your way into that area. I'm not a welder, but I do know that them situations happen because the guy told me that did an intake for me that he had to do that. He said it was burning away when he was trying to fix it. And he does it all the time. He's not one of these guys that don't know what he's doing, so I always try to use people that I can put faith in. So, but anyway, the other pair of heads I did for this guy wound up being flow tested. He just flow tested them. And there were 317s. I wasn't allowed to do everything I wanted to do to him, but he did let me do the important stuff. But I didn't go the extra mile doing these ports how I think they work. As far as arching them like I usually do, as big as I do up here to get more area to the top. Some people say it don't work. That's okay, you can think it. Okay. Whoever wants to think that stuff can think it, and I'll make the 500 horsepower on a stock motor, and then you guys will wonder how are you doing that? You know, other guys would say, well, that's no big deal on an LS. Well, it is on a junk stock engine with just a cam and the intake that doesn't work as good as every other intake because we used the Holley, and we had it on an engine over there that's sitting on the stand that was just a junk engine. It made 504, and I did this kind of stuff to the heads that are on our car over there. And I'm telling you guys this because I had a guy got on my channel a while back. It's okay to have a difference of opinion, but this guy was just annihilating me, calling me a liar, telling me you didn't make that kind of power. I think its main reason is this. Here's my theory. I see for some of these guys like Rich Holdner, and he had said it's impossible to make the power that we made with that combination. Well, it's impossible for him, but here's the thing. He used ported heads and couldn't make that kind of power. But where they poured it like I'm doing here, he had to go to a trick flow head with a 225 runner to make about 3 horsepower more than what we made, or whatever it was. And our motor made more torque. And of course, it's like this here. Rick's tested his stuff there. Our test was done on a different dyno at another shop, but a good shop. And you guys always got to keep that in mind. Just like I just told you, my heads flowed 320 to 317s. But if I took them to another flow bench, they might flow 325 and they might flow 310. Yeah, I can vary that much. I have proof of that. I just don't want to go into a whole big thing about that set of heads right now. But it was on 2 flow benches. I'll tell you about it later because I'll get distracted from what I'm doing here. But here's the thing. I rounded these heads out before, and this is the style that I do them. I take it to the top right here and round it out. But when I do, I go all the way back. And it also gives me a lot more area to curve it in at the top right here. I like knowing that air can go to the top of the head where it wants to usually be. So they always say you can't force air to go where it doesn't want to go. So if that's true, why wouldn't you do the area where the air is at the most? And on a contradictory note, I concentrate on the short side where the air doesn't like to go, and I'll concentrate on that area so that air can go down the short side runner just as easy as the long side. That's a hard one to do. I've been pulling that off a lot lately. I think it's hard to do. Some guys would say, that's no big deal. Well, it might not be a big deal when you have a big flow bench, high dollar equipment. Let me tell you something. When you're a guy like me, yeah. So whoever wants to jump on my channel and say, oh, my guy did a pair of heads, he flowed 325, he flowed 330 with them 317, save it. I'm not a flow number guy. I don't care what they flowed. The guy I did them for does. I don't. And that's because that doesn't prove how they'll run on the vehicle, even though I did them. Will they run on the vehicle? Well, I did everything I've done before, and I know our car over there sure did. And them heads were done kind of on the extreme side, not blowed out like these, because my son, he didn't want me getting carried away where we had to fix them either. So they're close to these. And then the other ones I did for the other guy are underneath ours. And then I have these. There's not going to be much more I could do to these things because these are going to actually be in a danger zone because of where I've taken some of the metal. It's thin. And I'd like to get my son to weld them up in them areas and then taper it back in. And then somebody might say, well, why'd you take the metal there if you're going to put metal back? That's why I want to tell you this. I can put the metal back where it's weak and then taper that port end to how I want to make it, not how the factory made it. I can taper that runner in where I think it will be better. You got to remember one thing. These heads work good. They weren't out to make 800 horsepower at the GM plant. They were out to make a vet or whatever they were going on have the 400 horsepower they were intended for. You only have to even touch these heads to do that, or more, depending on what you do with the rest of the combination. I thought I'd just run that by you guys. Happy Easter, by the way. Yeah, I'm out here at Easter time. When somebody needs their heads back and I have them, I don't want to hold them up. My stuff's on the back burner again. Don't be upset with me. I'm going to try to at least get these where I can get these out the door. If the guy says, hey, I need them. I might have a couple hours left on them, but I got to get them down where that happens because he's going to want these pretty soon. I think he'd like to actually have them now. He's actually sick right this minute, so I know he's not doing nothing within the next week here. So, that's why I tell you guys that. And we can say, well, here we go. He was on a good roll with the 460. Now, be a year before we see that stuff again. The 302 stuff went in the corner. We haven't seen none of that. Yeah. I'm like a cat chasing its tail, fellas. Be on one thing, half done. The other thing, the part right over there still. That's all future stuff. That's stuff that I want to do. I have other stuff to be done. I gotta get the Mustang up and running. That should be actually be coming first because all I gotta do with that is get the fuel up on it, the fuel pressure, put the pump back in it, and the fuel tank back in it. And I gotta actually do some burnouts. That's too easy, guys. I'd rather start from scratch, do a 460 that has to piston down the hole and use camshaft, and that's more fun, right, guys? When you start from scratch and you don't know how something's going to run. When you have a car, you know how it runs already. You just have to get it back where it was. Anyway, fellas, I want to tell you Happy Easter, and that's what this was basically about. I can't never make it simple. I got to go on and go into my stories and the whole 9 yards. I throw more segments away. You guys see one with a couple mistakes, but there's always 5 or 6 in the trash before that one. 3 or 4 at least, guys. To this time. But I promise you a mistake in every one, guys. The one I did before this, I was telling you about the heads, the flow numbers, and say, well, if I did a pair that had 220 CFM and one that had 300, I meant to say 290. You guys are like, that's a big difference. I was the first guy with, most of you guys be like, well, that's a big difference. We'll take that. We'll go with it. But somebody else, they'll be right on there. That's no way that car would go that fast with a 220 runner or CFM compared to 300. That guy's nuts. Well, I am nuts. That's beside the point. Happy Easter, guys. Enjoy your day. Take care.